To you, my name is Arnel Madrazo and I'm the teacher blogger. So for this vlog, we are going to do some sort of an instructional video on how to write a research workbook. So I'm just going to present to you 7 points because according to cognitive psychologists, the average human brain can only process 7 items. No? So for this particular blog, let me just simplify by just presenting to you 7 points. So let us start, okay? Okay, so let's start with number 1. So point number 1 is there has to be a purpose. So in writing a workbook, you start with a purpose. So what's the purpose of your workbook? So on our part, in Western Mindanao State University, really the purpose is to come up with a workbook that will follow the blended learning approach that we are following, knowing that it's pandemic. So there has to be both online and offline text that students can process. No? By online text, we mean online platform, right? So there has to be a hard copy of the workbook in case the students cannot go online. So I cannot really give you all the details because there's really an office that is assigned to direct faculty, for example, in the Western Mindanao State University, to direct faculty to come up with a uniform workbook, manual, or module. So these are the 3 options that were given by the office, and that it's important that we follow a certain template. And these 3 outputs that we are required to submit will have to be following guidelines. So that is what I'm going to show to you now here in my laptop. But I cannot really explicitly show everything. Only that perhaps for some parts that I can show you, especially perhaps on the guidelines and perhaps objectives, but I cannot really show to you the entire workbook that I did. No? So at this particular point, I'm done with the workbook. That's why I'm able to vlog the process. So that's number 1, the purpose. In that, it's important that your workbook should connect or jive with the syllabus, right? So it's important that you need to see whether the objectives are in line with the objectives set forth in the syllabus. And as we are required to submit a learning packet, individual learning packet, that is in fact a requirement for blended learning approach. Now we call that 70-20-10. So as to whatever is that format, I might be giving you a bit of an idea of what is the blended learning approach of Western Mindanao State University. So maybe at this particular point, I can show to you here on my laptop how I go about writing a workbook, right? So come, I'll show you. Okay, so I'm going to show to you how I started. So first, purpose, and then I need to ensure that I'm doing the correct workbook by following the guidelines, right? So let me show to you the guidelines. Okay, first, let us, I'm going to show to you, first of all, organize your files well. Now, we have to organize your files well. So I have my own, since this laptop is my wife, so I really have to come up with my own documents. So these are my documents. So in my documents, I already have here syllabus, right? So in the syllabus and in the ISMP. So this is the office that is assigned to work on the guidelines. So this is a department or an office in Western Mindanao State University that would, it's a centralized office that would direct faculty on how to write module, a workbook
and manual. So in this case, there are guidelines here. So if you look at the word filing here, so there's guideline 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you open, I cannot really show to you the details, but let me just show to you the first one. So these are the guidelines in writing self-instructional modules, right? Okay. So if you notice, there's really clear guidelines, no? So there's really clear guidelines of module template. So this is a template for module. And so this is the explanation. So there's really some sort of context, a background, the basis for module and module writing. So there are really speakers on this. So if, for example, you're viewing this blog, if you want to be trained on module writing, you can just write Western Mindanao State University, and then the speakers, perhaps if they're willing to go to your place, then you can invite them, right? So another guidelines here. So number 2. Okay, so here, laboratory manual. So manual is really for laboratory, so for science teachers, for nursing teachers. No? So there's template here. So I'm sorry I cannot really give this to you in detail because I did not ask permission. But just for purposes of ideas, there's really a template. So this is what I'm following. So guidelines in writing workbook. So I'm really following. As to whether or not I'm following, I'm doing the right workbook, I really have to follow. There's background. So why do we need the workbook template? So in this case, I came up with my own introduction. So why workbook? Why is there a need? So here, title of the workbook, author. So this one is co-authored with my wife, Claire Madraso. So there's really a template. See, look at this one. So really, this is owned. The reason why I cannot give you the manual in detail, page by page, because this is now the property of WMSU. I'm only showing to you just a brief process as to how I did the workbook. So really, it's important to know the purpose. So the purpose is drawn from Western Mindanao State University's policy. So it's in fact a policy already that faculty can come up with a workbook, manual, module based on a given template and guidelines of a particular office. So I think I'm pretty sure that I'm following the guidelines well. I'm really reading the guidelines in order that if this will be checked, perhaps less minor corrections will be done. So again, the reason I cannot give you this because this is now the property of WMSU, so we need permission on that. So here, after reading the guidelines, I need to check also the syllabus. So this is the syllabus. This, in fact, Dr. Claire is teaching ESL 199. So this is our syllabus. So this is outcomes-based syllabus. So we start with mission, vision, and then there's objective or goals, college goals. Then there's program outcomes, so on and so forth. I think some of you are familiar with this. And then the format here, references first. So this is already an existing syllabus. So what we do is, since it's pandemic, we were required to attend a webinar on blended learning. Since this syllabus is tailored fit for face-to-face class. Now, since it's not anymore possible, so what we did was we came up with our own blended learning. WMSU came up with their own its own blended learning design. And so this existing syllabus will have to be revised based on we have this individual learning packet. So individual learning packet is already tailored fit, the activities, objectives. Individual learning packet is like syllabus also, but it's shorter version, but it's really tailored fit to 70-20-10. So the 70-20-10 is 70 is the workbook manual or modules. That's the workbook, the hard copy that the students are required to have, and then 20% is internet online connection with students, and then the 10% would be the assessment. So there's still an assessment in the blended learning approach that we are using. So after reading the syllabus, I'm now clear of the content. So in the syllabus, the contents are there. So I check the content of Dr. Claire. And so I'm also teaching those. No? Only that we just need to really tailor fit it to the online, offline. Online, that's the challenge, the online and the offline modalities. No? So if you're clear with that, then you can already come up with a workbook that is tailored fit for online and offline modalities. So you cannot teach based on the existing syllabus because that is appropriate for face-to-face. But we need to revise. We need to revise the syllabus, tailored fit to the individual learning packet, which is already online, offline modalities in terms of its structure. So now, after all this, then we already come up with this one. So the module, and I mean the workbook already. So in terms of the workbook, it's not here. Wait, maybe I can just show all my files no after this so that to ensure that you have a backup. So what I do is I always please also do this whenever you're doing a project. Always make sure, do not forget this. Always save it in your Google Drive or in your Dropbox. Always So this one, I have this here. I have a folder research. Okay. So I have a folder research workbook references. So everything. So references. So I include here, and then I save this by date, so that I keep track. The rubric also is here. So is it this one? So the last one was July 10. I think that's July 10, 11, 9. I think it's this one. Okay, so do you see that? That's July 11. I'm done with this one, July 11, 6:30 p.m. So I always, in terms of file name, I'm really definite. So sometimes you miss this part whenever you save your file. Okay, so this is already the finished product. I did not yet remove the guidelines because I'm not yet, this is just a draft. Then we are not yet done with the table of contents. So this is my introduction. Got the introduction, so I have background of the workbook. So this is really tailored fit to pandemic, and then this one, activity 1. So research in the real world, then introduction, then objectives, concepts, explanation, then exercises, then all exercises. Then we also have worksheet number 1, individual work, it's group. So after the exercises, we have worksheet. So this is where these worksheets are also available for online interaction with students. So what I do is I connect with my students using Google Drive. So we have one folder where I upload the worksheets so they can now if in case they don't have internet, this will be attached. This is a one workbook hard copy that they are required to have. So that is the offline modality. And then this one, problematizing and hypothesizing. So I cannot show to you everything. So maybe I can show to you now how I'll be. No, I cannot use this laptop for Turnitin. So maybe some other time I can show to you how I do Turnitin software. So maybe that would be enough, Plus Professor Berhana might be reprimanding me for showing. This is not yet a final copy. Now, if you want expertise, you may invite Professor Berhana. She is, I think, the head of the office on instructional materials, the modules, the workbook, and modules, manual, and workbook. So these are instructional materials that we are using in music.
Okay, so next is the outlining. it is important for us to really come up with an outline in terms of the contents, no? The contents, so that you will not be mixing up a lot of content. So sometimes, there's this tendency that we include a lot of contents, no? Sometimes we wouldn't know what to include first and what not to include, because we are not outlining. So outlining is a basic skill in writing that even for teachers, writing a workbook can be applied. So it's important, again, to outline your contents that you're going to include in your workbook. And then the fourth one, you really have to make use of books. So I think really prioritize the use of references, books, right? So the only issue is how recent, because some of the teachers are still using their books, no? Published 20 years ago. That can still be used, no? Because these are foundational readings. But then there are also new edition that you can check online, Google Books. Sometimes there are free pages available. So that is what I do. I upgrade. I'm including current editions, no? So that the books that you are using that will be included in the references will be not later than the 90s. So sometimes it's not anymore acceptable if you're using sources published in the 70s, no? But again, it depends on what you are discussing to students. So if it's 2020 now, at least 2010, right? But again, it depends on what really is the content learning area that you are teaching. So sometimes foundational sources are still very reliable if you are going straight to the source, no? So it's okay for foundational readings, no? You can include original sources, but there are also updated versions where these authorities were mentioned in the 60s or even in the 50s, but the publication is already considered a recent version, no? Edition. So again, for me, follow the recency practice, but as well, do not forget the original source, no? I mean the original publication when it was published. Okay? So next is summarize and paraphrase ideas. So again, we need to set our students that bar or that we are a good model, no, in terms of paraphrasing and summarizing. Because if we are requiring students not to copy ideas from the internet, so we will have to start from amongst ourselves in the academy to practice summarizing and paraphrasing. I think it's important that when we are writing, paraphrasing would mean stating the ideas taken from other source into your own words, so being the note taker. So also cite the sources properly. So on my part, I'm using American Psychological Association format version 6. So I'm using 6 still. APA 6 is still acceptable in publication. So, setting as an example, if you are a writer of the workbook, especially on my part, I'm teaching research, I really have to set as an example, no? I really need to model them. Okay, so this is how you write the introduction, no? So, proper citation and your insights as well are included in the workbook. So, that's number 6, contextualize. So, do not just always deep already. There's required parts of the workbook. You start with introduction. So in the introduction, you need to share your ideas, your insights. And even in the introduction per activity, as I presented to you a while ago, I think you can also really include your insights, no? Not only using ideas from the sources, you can also share your own insights, no? As a writer. It's important that as a workbook writer, your identity is also present there. in order that you're able to communicate with your readers, your students. And sometimes, the textbooks that you are using, the sources that you're using, sometimes are not appropriate really to their level. So sometimes, if you're using the texts from difficult sources, so students might find it difficult to process. But on my part, I'm really trying to contextualize my lesson according to my target students who are possibly AB English students. And then the last one, the number 7, is for the exercises. No, here's the thing: are you allowed to copy verbatim exercises from other textbook? As much as possible on my part, for objective type of tests. So enumeration. So you need not really copy from other textbook. The ideas or the content that you're including will have to be connected to the exercises. Sometimes what you're presenting, some writers are, trying to include all the ideas taken from other sources, and then they're also taking exercises taken from other sources. So sometimes, it becomes like the delicacy. Do you know chop suey? It's like chop suey. You're mixing things up, and then in the end, exercises. Sometimes it does not connect. It does not associate to the objectives that you would want to really accomplish. So on my part, I am trying to include my insights, contextualize the lesson, and then I'm making sure that the exercises are based on my own construction. So now there's one or two parts here that I adapted. Example, you really have to adapt a certain task. How do you do it? You need to really specify adapted from, or cite if you took the exercise verbatim, you really have to cite the source properly, so that you will not be accused of plagiarism. Again, as teachers, we need to serve as a model in terms of showing students intellectual honesty or credibility, right? So now, I think that would be all. No? So I hope you learned something, and I hope that you learned something from this blog. So do not forget, if you like this blog, if you found this informative, like, comment, and subscribe. So again, I'm Arnel Madrazo. Thank you. Bye. See you later.